Ishwar. Welcome to PitchCamp event on all about entrepreneurship. How can we make it easier, better, and really how do we crack this puzzle? So I'm excited to have you today and have this
Thanks, Bimlesh.
conversation.
It's one of my favorite topics. At least I don't know whether it's a favorite topic to have answers for. I think it's definitely a favorite topic to have questions for, right? So
Right.
it's a hard enough puzzle to solve. So I guess, but yeah, super excited to be here and to chat about this session, right? I mean, I think it's going to be fabulous. Let's just take it one step at a time.
Fantastic. So I think both of us have got a lot of interest with with entrepreneurship and startups. I'm attempting my third venture, with PitchCamp, which is again focusing on the entrepreneur ecosystem.
Yeah.
Completely from a communication and from a growth angle, right? To help entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs, to communicate their ideas better to investors so that they have a much more easier process in raising funds.
Yeah.
And the other angle that we do is also to help entrepreneurs to coach on their sales journey, because many of us come from a tech background and we have never done sales. So sales is such a critical factor. I'm equally excited to know your variety of experience in entrepreneurship. You are also attempting your fourth startup now with Unsolved. So talk to us a little bit about your first three, and then we'll come into Unsolved and get into specifics of how entrepreneurship has changed now.
Hey, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? Actually, why Unsolved is obviously a result of the previous three startups, right? I think that's it's kind of a journey that I've been through. I think before I started my first startup, I think I would have had about 8 different business plans, right? Just business plans on my computer, which were being created on weekends when I'm not at work, right? So, and it was as much as I'd learned to create business plans in B school, I don't think putting it in action was as easy, right? I mean, I don't think you really learn that. You learn a lot about managing in B school rather than creating and getting something off the ground. So it still felt like very, a territory which I could not understand. It took me like 3-4 years of just various business plans, various events, various networking, all of that, joining a startup itself, and then finally taking the plunge like maybe 4 years after I first thought about taking a plunge, right? So, part of the reason for that entire delay I guess it's a delay, right? But part of the reason for delaying for 4 years was just because I didn't know how. I'm like, how do you start? What should I do next? Okay, I have this idea. Where do I go? Like all of that, right? And of course, did my first venture. Honestly, it was, I think it was just a bad idea. Those are my, kind of takeaways, right? So the first one was complete damn squib, right? The second one was just like, if I had done the business model right, just the business model. I was so focused on ensuring that I keep things free for the customer and I charge, let's say, a vendor versus if I had switched the model around, and if someone had just told me that, right? Because everything else was fine. We had traction, we had this, we had all of that going. But, just having the wrong business model in my head because of some preconceived notion that all apps have to be free, right?
So what is this? What was the startup about?
So this is actually similar to, let's say, a Zomato Gold of sorts, right? So way back then, like in 2012, 2013, right? What we basically did was it was a membership-based club where you would get escalating discounts at restaurants the more frequently you visited them.
Got it.
Right? Now, so not only was I offering a discount to the end customer, but I was also giving them the app for free, right? And then I was asking the vendor, the restaurant on the other side, right, saying, pay me and also give a discount to the end customer, right? Now that doesn't work. I mean, now it's kind of obvious to me that that won't work, right? I mean, the customer should just pay. But at that point in time, all apps were free. Internet was free. There was no way people could think of charging for, like content was free. The entire internet, the web, nobody really thought about paying for anything, right? So,
Right.
and that was the thought process with which I had, kind of started that first one. Got a lot of traction on both sides, but business model failing, some tech issues, all of that, right? Finally moved on, started the next thing, which was Ferdo, right? And that thankfully did fairly well, right? I mean, took it to about 50 crore revenue run rate, 100-man team, profitability under, 2 years, all of that stuff. And of course, learnings from there also are that, there was just a very heavily funded competitor, right? I mean, so very heavily funded competitor who raised 70 million, right? And then we were like, yeah, that's a little tricky, right? I mean, being profitable became a little harder, when you have someone with very deep pockets willing to acquire customers at any cost, right? So, nonetheless, interesting businesses, interesting option. When I went on and I said, okay, now fourth one, what next, right? Then I was like, I had this idea, and for some reason, right, my network was a little like they were already either committed in a startup, or they were working in a senior position in a startup, or they were just not in that frame of mind, right? They were like, I'm like, no, I'm not doing startup. I have responsibilities and stuff like that, and I don't want to do this stuff, right? So I was actually not able to find anyone to kind of bounce my ideas off, and just say, hey, listen, this is what I want to build. What do you think? Right. So it was a kind of I mean, I would get people to bounce it off, but no one serious, right? Like who's willing to
Right.
actually say, oh, this is interesting. Let's work on it for some time, right? So had that as a challenge, and I'm like, dude, like this is the fourth venture. It can't still be this hard, I'm like, I'm like still stuck at idea stage, and then eventually got a person who was working with for the longest time at Perdo, joined hands with them, all of that stuff, right? But it was still hard. The product building was still hard. Still made a bunch of mistakes because the previous one did really well. So then there was a little bit of overconfidence, right?
Right.
You're like, okay, I know what I'm doing, all of that, right? And what I've understood at least is that just listen to the market and keep iterating, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that's where Unsolved was born at some level, right? Saying, hey, it's really, really hard for first time entrepreneurs. 9 out of 10 startups fail. Um, uh, Actually, there's a massive ratio, actually, right? 9 out of 10 ideas don't become even a side project,
Correct.
right? 9 out of 10 side projects don't become a startup. And then 9 out of 10 startups fail. I mean, if you just look at that number, that the number of people who want to start up to the number who actually achieve, let's say, a financially successful outcome for the founder, let's say,
Correct.
right, is so minuscule, right? That obviously it's a very scary proposition for most people to do, right? I mean, like, well, if most startups are going to fail, then and startups by very way by even people who are funded, right? Even the folks who are funded, I think the ratio there also is like 75% pretty much eventually shut shop, right? So
Right.
that means after raising money, the ratio is 25% going on to become reasonably huge, right? So, which is everything is stacked up against you, right? I mean, there's absolutely not one thing that I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a single thing that you can call as not stacked up against you. So,
Right.
somewhere there, I think that became the genesis for Unsolved.xyz, right? And we said, is there a way for first time founders to learn? And then we said, who are the best people to learn from? We said, another founder who has been there, done that, right? And he needn't have done everything, right? It's just
Right.
that, hey, listen, I am planning to do B2B sales, therefore, can I find someone who's done it before, right? Or if I'm planning to do, run lead generation via Facebook, right? Has someone done that? Or if I'm looking at building a SaaS product, can I talk to other SaaS entrepreneurs on how they built it? What do they already know? Right? I mean, like a lot of the SaaS entrepreneurs will say it's easier to earn $1 than it's easier than to earn a rupee. Right?
Right.
Now this is so they would so a lot of them launch here, then eventually go to foreign markets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But these are learnings that you won't get in isolation. You can have a good idea, right? And then you have to learn everything by yourself, so that learning by yourself, I think, is the flaw, somewhere there, because all of us tend to just be in our cocoons as founders. And of course, you and me know now, you're on the third, I'm on the fourth, right? Being a founder is a really lonely job, right? I mean, it's it's
Yeah.
super, super lonely. So,
Absolutely.
who else do you lean on? I mean, it's you have to lean on other founders. Is my guess. All of us are lonely. Great, come together and let's have a party, right? I think.
Right. Right. Fantastic. So from 2012 to 2020, a lot of things around the world has changed, right? And
Yeah.
2020 has been the biggest game changer for everybody around the world, right? So, if you take this as a blip, what do you think have been the fundamental changes in the Indian startup ecosystem between 2012 to say pre-COVID 2020? I have some milestones that will be, I'll
Yeah.
share my perspective, but would love to hear your perspectives, on the shift
Maybe
from
you
your
go,
first
because
startup to now.
I've been talking a fair bit. Maybe you should tell me what you think. How these changes have happened. I'll give you my brief takeaway, and then I'll kind of
Sure.
hear from you, right? Because I want to kind of get that from you as well. Uh, I think the difference between, let's say, the first time 2010 when I started, right, and now 2020, right, is that two broad things. One is people have learnt more, right? I mean, collectively as an ecosystem, we have learned what works, we learned what gets funded, we have learned what exits, we've learned what makes money, right? All of that, right? The second thing that I personally feel is that the biggest change that has happened is that it's become immensely easier actually to start.
Right.
2010 meant if you have to start anything, you have to do everything, right? I mean, you have to like almost build payment gateway software yourself, right? I mean, it was
Right.
like just finding easy integration was not available. Today, I can just go, create a payment link and share it with people, right? I'm like, I can just get started in like a few minutes. So creating a website used to be like web design agency, right? I mean, I'll have to give a web development agency, and then they'll give me a budget, and then all of that kind of stuff. Today, you want a budget, you just take a tool, or sorry, you want a website, you can take a tool and launch in 3 hours, right? So I think those are the broad changes that I see, in the ecosystem.
Fantastic.
What do
And
you what do
I
you
think
feel is
from,
your
yeah,
journey?
I
Yeah.
agree to most of your points. To add a few there, I see, a shift between a lot of tech first generation entrepreneurs came into the ecosystem and they bet big, right? And the fundamental reason that those bets became bigger was the internet penetration and mobile buying behavior amongst the masses, right? At 2011, I remember me doing my executive MBA and jotting down a bunch of ideas, and that's when Big Basket got created, Flipkart raised their first round, and that whole buzz of the first generation tech entrepreneur ecosystem started to get created. And as you said, starting an idea is easy, but collecting payments on internet was a nightmare, right? And even building products, like you said, website is one great low hanging fruit example, which today, over these years, you've got a lot of do it yourself options apart from GoDaddy website builder, right?
Yeah.
Which is the most 101 framework available. I think the next big shift that also happened was access to building tools without a lot of building products or solutions without a lot of tech infrastructure, right? So the cloud really started to take off, and developers started to figure out that even as a tech founder, that hey, in a bunch of clicks, and if I have certain amount of money, minuscule money, I can actually get a working prototype without having to buy a server.
Yeah.
Right? So AWS and Google Cloud had just started to begin. AWS was the biggest benefactor of enabling startups to experiment and iterate across the world, right? And I think that created the big shift between people trying to tinker out ideas and trying to build a lot of prototypes. And as mobile became more mature, then you started to see a lot of mobile apps, which brought in a whole lot of new users, created a lot of competition, killed out a lot of competition. Few survived. They became category leaders, obviously, with the raise of huge amounts of funding and execution. Not all of them that raise money were able to survive in the market as well. So I think these, combined with access to funds, I think that ecosystem, more investors open to fund new ideas, and just that tech infrastructure, and as a payment processing got more mature. Today, Razorpay and Instamojo, as you said, it's just so simple to create a link or a button and get your payment up and running. So you can literally sell anything.
Yeah.
Right? And I think these nuances today, when compared to even 5 years, 8 years ago, have been a big game changer.
Yeah. I actually think even like 4-5 years ago, this was like very hard,
Right.
So
I think
now
a lot
like
of companies a lot of guys who have lost jobs or who have been pushed to the corner in their current roles, if they are sitting in somewhere in the corner, thinking about what next, I'm getting so frustrated. I think there can be no better time to actually kickstart and try out some new things in today's world.
Yeah.
Right. You got customers, everyone who is virtually connected. A new generation of people have started to learn to use Zoom. Right. So even grandparents are using Zoom. They're all using video calls. So now you have senior citizen market also available on the tech now.
That's true. The market just became bigger.
Yeah.
I actually think that there's one more effect of the Zoom thing, right? I mean, because you no longer need to have a presence in any city. Before, if you didn't have an office, right, you're like, I can't sell in a city. I mean, at some level, and that's how it used to be. Today, nobody wants to meet you, right? So it's like, and I think that trend is likely to continue because now you can sell any part of the world. Before we had to sell to, let's say, the US, there was only one way to do it, right? I mean, you actually needed feet on street, you needed all of that, right? So, but today I think it's become much, much, much easier to access customers. There's a lot of, not just that, I just think the tools are becoming better and better, right? I mean, I see smaller teams achieving more, right? So, I think things which would have not been possible, right? I mean, like you need today you can design by yourself, you can create by yourself, you can code by yourself. I mean, it is possible technically to be a solo engineering founder, or let's say, as long as you can build whatever that building is, right? I mean, if you can build, it's potentially possible. Of course, it's not as much fun, I guess, so you may want a partner along in the journey just for all the lows that accompany the few highs. But yeah. So
absolutely. I think the number of another point that you shared earlier was as an ecosystem, the learning has happened on investing, shutting down, and also having decent exits to great exits. That money is being further reinvested back in the ecosystem with newer age startups. Right?
Yeah.
And then the previous founders are now becoming angel investors, though they are again reinvesting their money into the next gen startups and so on. So even that maturity of investors in the Indian ecosystem has also changed.
Yeah.
Right? The risk appetite, however, is still different versus a US investor risk appetite versus an Indian investor risk appetite. but now you have a lot more variety of investors to access and to choose from.
True.
Right. And
I think
I think one of the, I remember when I was trying to start my first venture, just setting up the company, right? It ended up becoming a 5-month project, what was expected to be a 45-day project. Right?
I
For some
completely agree.
reason, that was a time frame where TCS was migrating to Infosys, and corporate affairs portal was broken. It just stalled. Today, literally, you get your startup created, registered, company set up. Everything happens under a month.
Yeah.
So
And it should technically
I
be
think that's also been a
I think it should become much lesser than that, but let's say, this itself is an improvement. But I think in today's age, where you can get paid in like, you can register and get paid like instantly, like forming a company seems to take a fair bit of time, right? So, yeah.
absolutely. So
But tell
with
me,
Unsolved, you interact with a lot of founders. I've been interacting with a lot of founders, from an investor pitch, coaching point of view.
yeah.
So talk to me some things you see that the new first time entrepreneurs are bringing on the table, and something that you see that's big time a challenge for them.
So I think awareness is a problem, right? I mean, serial entrepreneurs like you and me, we know that there are a lot of these tools available. Right, so there are tools available. You can build stuff by yourself. We've been seeking these out for a fair bit of time. But I
Right.
think first time entrepreneurs still think that I have an idea, I need tech co-founder. Right? So, like as simple as I have an idea for a marketplace, so therefore now I have to build the marketplace ground up. Now, this is the common thinking that everybody has, right? And
Correct.
come what may, if you build ground up, you'll have an extremely raw, unusable product, in 6 months' time, right? Or maybe 1 year time also will be a reasonably raw product, which people in today's day and age, considering the slickness in what they're, what they're experiencing. So instead of that, there is an off-the-shelf product which can get you up and running in like overnight, pretty much, right?
Exactly.
Now, just that awareness that this is possible, right, is non-existent. Like you could create a education course overnight. You could create a marketplace overnight. Of course, e-commerce, Shopify has led that revolution for a fair bit of time. I think they were the original, no-code pioneers of sorts, right? But a lot of these are available now to start overnight, right? I mean, you can start collecting payments for anything, really, really quickly. Zoom allows you to start tuitions online, or pretty much. So I'm saying, as much as both of us potentially are from that tech investor, VC, founder market, right? There's also what I normally try and caution people is that everyone actually uses this. The examples of, oh, Facebook didn't have a monetization for the longest time. WhatsApp didn't have monetization for the longest time. I'm like, dude, do you even know how many startups will survive if you don't have monetization? Like literally none, right? I mean, the number of VC invested in startups itself is like 1%, right?
Right.
So I'm like, what happens to the rest of the 99? Somehow money has to come in the bank, right? And even the people who are invested in, most of them will have a business model, right? They'll have some way to make money. So I still see that, let's say, one of the things I see fairly often is that first time entrepreneurs think about problem and solution. They're not really going forward and looking at opportunity, right? So
Right.
opportunity is where is the money? Is there enough money in
Right.
this? Right? If I solve this, will I make enough money? Right? Enough money to leave a job, enough money to whatever else, right? I mean, one first level is of course get your livelihood, right? If you can get there, that's a great first step. But I think because most of the time you're giving up some opportunity cost, right? Where you're like, you would have otherwise had a great paying job. Now you need to ensure that when the payoff happens, it compensates for that. It doesn't become another job, right? I mean, so you're not really moving from here to there to do another job, but so people thinking of it financially, right? Saying, okay, this is the problem. If I solve it, this is how much money can be made. This is why this is a large problem. There's a large market. How fast can I capture the market? Sometimes not thinking about how much competition is there, right? Is this a competition infested space, right? If I solve this, will I be one of the only players left, or will there just be a lot of people, right, who will copy? See, basically, any
Right.
successful business will be copied because a lot of people think ideas will be copied.
Correct.
Right? So I deal with that almost on an everyday basis where people think ideas are being copied. And I'm like, nobody copies ideas. Well, I mean, are you going to steal the Mona Lisa or the painting in my house, right? I mean, the one that's behind. I'm like,
Right.
if you have to steal something that's valuable, so
Right.
this
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. Chakradhar is
There,
actually asking a question. We should probably also look at, kind of pacing this so that we can take some of the questions and probably pull some folks on
yeah,
stage to
absolutely.
join us in the discussion as well. Right? Starting up should take an hour. Yeah, I think an hour to, yeah, potentially 3 hours. I think a lot of it is in the mind though, right? I mean, you have to determine what you want to do, who's your customer, what are you selling, and kind of figuring out how to sell it, right? Uh, uh, Otherwise, the actual task can be, can be done, right? Yeah, I completely agree.
there's also
Business
a
is
difference
not ideal.
between there's also a difference between building a product versus building a business, right? That's a fundamental difference, right? Building a product is great. You have an idea, you're able to build it. It's either offers utility value or it solves an automation problem. But figuring out how do you make money out of it is where the crux lies, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
typically, what I've been seeing is a first-time tech founder tends to focus too much on the tech and not looking at from a business model or from a money point of view. Like you also said as well. I think that's a natural tendency to lean towards building a tech-first product and then looking at business. But I think it's so very important for the founder to to spare the time to start exploring where the avenues of making money is going to be coming from. You may run an initial trial, initial validation, but then figuring out as quickly as possible that which type of customer, which channel of distribution, which markets is going to pay you at what price, and at that price, can you survive? Can you
yeah,
expand? Can you
yeah,
scale? I think those are the biggest gaps. Apart from everything else, that the tech challenges are there, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think if as an ecosystem or even as a founder, if they start reaching out to people in finding answers to these questions, I think we'll have a much more profitable or growing businesses being built in the ecosystem.
Hey, I want you to kind of just answer Madhav's question, right? He's trying to make us pick, right? If we have
Right.
to say one skill an entrepreneur has to pick, so I'm going to pose this question to you, right? So, is it going to be sales, marketing, management, or technology, right?
Interesting, very interesting question. A tough question. There's no straight answer to it, but I'll add another skill there. The most important is to an important skill to have is that problem solving skill, right? How do you solve a particular problem? You see an opportunity of a problem being presented by a set of customers or in a segment. There can be n number of ways that you solve a problem. You can solve it even using a traditional face-to-face paper and pen. It has X cost. You use offline, online, it has X, Y cost. You go completely online, you have a Z cost, right? So I think that ability to solve problems and figure out which is a more efficient way to solve problem is a great skill to have, which is like a soft skill but an essential skill for the entrepreneur. After that, I think your you know I think all of them have an equal weightage in my view, where that's where your co-founding team comes into play, where every founder brings a particular strength to the table. Somebody is good at tech, somebody is good at marketing, somebody is good at just the customer experience point of view, or if you're a B2B product, then you've got to have somebody who has a sales inclination or a sales background, right? So every founder brings one core skill set and everything else is kind of brought in.
Got it. Let me actually also take a shot at answering the same thing, because I have a slightly different view, right? I mean, I think of course you need to start from problem and solution, but the only way to determine whether it's a real problem and a real solution is to go and sell it. So what I was saying is that if I had to pick, right, and this is something that I tell folks, the earlier you can sell, the better, right? Because when you sell even a concept, right? So there's a stage when you're selling concept, saying, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? Hey, I think you have this problem. Do you have this problem? Oh, you have this problem. How are you solving it today? Right. Oh, you're solving it like this. I have a better solution, right?
Exactly.
What do you think of the better solution? You don't actually have to have the solution, right? But you have to be in a position to sell your vision or your concept to people. The earlier, the better, right? Because that means that it's because, like, I mean, these are stats by Y Combinator, right? That 42% startups fail because there is no market need.
Correct.
I mean, can you imagine? Basically, the problem is in your head. Actually, though, to be fair, I've interacted with a lot of founders, and they always have a genuine insight somewhere in their idea, right? But then, how do you shape and extract that idea is always like a question mark for them. So then, once they have that, then they're exposed to other problems, and then they go into solving all problems instead of focusing on the insight.
Right.
So that's another danger of talking to customers, because when you talk to customers and let's say they resonate with the problem, right? Then they say, sit down, I'll tell you all my problems. Right? That's very, very dangerous, because you're like now going to get all the problems of this customer and you're going to think, oh, if I solve all of these problems, will they pay? Right? The role of a founder, of an entrepreneur, is to determine the minimum problem required to get that. If you solve that minimum problem, you will get paid. Right? Now, how do you find the minimum problem is a challenge, right? I mean, it's always a challenge, right? I mean, like, let's say, for example, a decent example that I normally use a lot of times, right? I mean, Swiggy versus Freshman, right? Both of them delivered food home, but Swiggy defined the minimum problem as delivery from point A to point B, right? Versus Fresh Menu that defined the minimum problem as creating healthy food and delivering it to you, right? These are very different minimum problems.
Ball games, yeah.
Yeah, so because one involves kitchens and hiring people and all of that, right? Well, at the end, it's the same solution. I am sitting at home and I get food.
Yeah, I
right?
get food, yeah.
But it's these very minor problem. I mean, if you take a third player in the space like Rebel Foods and how they're using cloud kitchens and now acting as distribution partners, let's say for Wendy's, right? These are all somewhere saying I'm getting you food delivered home, but very, very different models, very, very different minimum problem statements, right? And getting the right
markets. Different markets. Yeah.
Actually, it seems like they are doing the same thing, right?
Correct.
If anyone came and told you 10 years ago, I want to deliver food to you at home, you would say, why, that player already doing it, this player is already doing it, this player is already doing it, Domino's already does it, all of that, right? So, so I just think minimum problem, is the key focus area that someone has to figure.
Very nice. So I think both of us are alluding to the to the same aspect there. of problem solving and the way you define your problem statement, right?
You're
so
right.
one of the things that I've been also seeing as part of my pitch coaching with a lot of founders is spend a hell lot of time in defining your problem, right? And I like the way you are defining it as a minimal problem, so we'll call that as an MPS, right? Your minimal problem statement.
Yeah,
Using the
yeah.
power of 3.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hey, Chakra.
Chakradhar.
Hi. Thank you for getting me on board. I think the discussion about doing, I think is very fundamental, and what Madhav was also asking, how do you get people moving? Uh, that having solved that, the bigger challenge I feel, and what I'm seeing on Unsolved as well, is that now there is a situation and I need to solve that situation. I have ideas and I don't know how to evaluate the ideas. So I'm seeing that as something that needs to be a process for us, Ishwar, in Unsolved itself.
Yeah.
Because uh, uh, being stuck or being in a trade-off situation or being in a scenario, what to do, this is a commonplace thing.
Yeah.
Now, having a process for thinking that, once you have started, the starting problem is a hard problem, but keeping the motion going, making progress day in and day out, I think is a tractable but still a hard problem.
You're right. I mean, I think going back to, the original topic, right? How to make it easier. And what you're saying is that the reason it's not easy at some level. So just going back to the whole, how do you make it easy, right? So I think sometimes entrepreneurs themselves complicate things, right? I mean, because they're not searching for minimum problem, minimum solution, right? And sometimes they believe that the solution needs to be created by them, ground up, right? What I tell people is minimum problem, stitch together a solution, right? Stitch together could be, hey, if you have an idea for online tuitions, right? Put a website and share a Zoom link, right? Or whatever, right? I mean, that's a minimum solution, right? You don't necessarily have to build a video product that automatically match makes the right tutor with the right student, right? So a lot of people think in that manner, especially if they have the ability to build, like, Bimlesh was saying earlier, right? He sees a lot of tech founders who, because they can build, they start building a lot more than necessary, right? And then it just becomes feature, and then they think that the answer is to have a lot.
I think, sorry, Bimlesh,
No, yeah.
one insight that came to me is, I think it's what Ishwar is saying. It requires a huge amount of humility of sorts, that the solution may come from the customer, may come from somebody else. It may come from just experimenting and not knowing the solution. Somewhere they should not feel that, hey, this is not my solution, so why should I try? So I feel that it may be a startup ego, so to speak, that I have the solution to this problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's typically it's a flavor of the Icarus curse, right? Your pride is your biggest downfall, or your strength is your biggest weakness. So one of the biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur, especially with a product or a service idea, is being you're trying to solve it because you're passionate about the problem and you see there is a way to serve your customers better. And in this process, you're so passionately involved in that product, it's very hard to also let go of that product in the way that you have envisaged, because now we are getting critical feedback from you. I think one of the aspects that every entrepreneur will go through that maturity is to have that ability to listen to that feedback from various stakeholders that you get, and the ability to filter out that feedback to see from the lens as an entrepreneur to see which does it really make sense, or is it a feedback that you would like to listen but not take action on, but you're increasing your awareness on the feedback. These are subtle differences, but they make a big impact in your thinking and execution ability.
So let me state another problem. I think Ishwar probably has more problems, but I am seeing only a few problems. So there are lots of startups which are 3 years old, 7 years old, but they are not able to move beyond 2 lakhs a month. And I'm telling them here there are hundreds of different things to do, but then they're not able to listen to somebody from outside of the organization of the startup. So I mean, even large organizations meet somebody who is in the 20 crore, 30 crore revenue range. My first thing to them is, can you listen to me? Because even though I'm not a customer, I'm not a vendor, I have no benefit from you, but I may have something for you because I'm seeing this. And I feel that this skill or this attitude or this switch has to be turned on. And I would like suggestions on how I should help the founders make that switch, that they're able to listen to me. I don't want a payment for it. I think this is where they're getting stuck. This is the one solution. And I'm happy to brainstorm that kind of thing, but I'm not able to pitch that as well.
I think I understand where you're coming from. There are two things that I would like to say. One, for your previous statement, right? One, you mentioned one of the things I try to say, often is that marry the problem, not your solution. The problem for a lot of entrepreneurs is because normally when you're in sales mode, right? And which is what you're doing when you're pitching, when you're telling an investor, you're basically saying, hey, I am awesome. I've got this problem. I've got the best solution in the world. And therefore you're in this extremely confident mode of pitching, right? Now, between a pitch mode and a feedback mode and a self-evaluation mode and then a hearing, listening mode, right? When you're in a pitch mode, you are always defensive. If they say no, but this won't work, you are like, no, it will work for this reason. Right? Rather than saying, oh, why do you think it won't work? Right? And in fact, if you ask investors, the people who they invest in also are not because they have the perfect solution. They say there is a term called coachability. Right? So is the founder coachable? Right? You cannot teach a student, right? They have to come. Right? They have to yearn for at some level they need to yearn to learn, right? So so I feel that those are the issues. And of course, if a person and another point to your thing, which you said, I think another statement I saw it somewhere. Whenever you get feedback from someone who has absolutely no reason to give you that feedback, no vested interest, right? So they're not a customer, not a partner, not a vendor, not an investor, not anything else. They're not in your team, right? All of that, right? They have absolutely no vested interest. You should definitely listen to that feedback. You can reject it, right? But listen, because the guy is telling you this only because he truly believes you should do this, right? He has no other reason to do that. So, I feel that the founders take that back, just if someone's giving you feedback when they don't have to, it is the most valuable feedback that you can get, right? So because you don't take it, they don't care, right? They've gone. They're like they have another thing to do, So
yeah, I'll add a perspective there. So there are two things when it comes to taking feedback. One is a very fundamental aspect of listening to that feedback, right? Second is to take action to it, right? There are a lot of founders who are in the pre-listening stages. They don't realize that they are stuck, right? And again, there are two types of people. Some founders are happy where they are, right? And that's absolutely fine. Not everyone needs not everyone is hungry enough to build $100 million or $1 billion business, right? So every founder is in a state of mind and in a state of their business with respect to their comfort zone. And once when somebody realizes that I need to break out, right, this is not enough for me, these are the guys who are hungry to figure out how do I break out of my current 2 crore or 2 lakh per month revenue phase. And these are the guys who will now go scampering around to figure out ideas, get feedback. So, as Ishwar said, this is a state of mind that the founder has to become aware and come out of that awareness mode to solicit inputs. Until then, even what outreach you do to these state of founders, you will always hit a roadblock because they don't want to change their awareness, right? Or even if they are aware, they are happy where they are. They don't want to take action to go further. So this becomes a classic case of these are not the ideal customers for somebody to share feedback with, right?
Got it.
Because once the person also giving a feedback at some point will expect them to take certain actions, whether consciously or subconsciously, right? That's when you feel that you have also added some value in the larger ecosystem point of view.
One question that I want to just take, right? I mean, Madhav talks about the lean startup method, right? I think, it's a great book to read, or you can just Google an article which summarizes the book for you, right? But I think different books have different methodologies, right? Everyone takes away what they want to do. I think my personal takeaway from the whole thing is, minimum problem, minimum solution, and fastest way to get paid, right? I mean, if you figure this out, you will start up, right? Because
that's exactly what Lean Startup also says.
yeah. So absolutely, these are the easiest way to get off the ground. Is my take, right? If the problem is narrow enough, you also don't feel the burden of creating, solving so many problems, right? I mean, otherwise, if you define a very wide problem set, like recently I was, even not too long ago, right? I was trying to explore other use cases for Unsolved.xyz, thinking of powering founder communities, right? We're thinking of powering internal innovation communities and things like that as well, right? Corporate innovation communities. And then I spoke to someone and they said, I think if you had asked me 2 or 3 years ago if this was a problem, I would have said yes, right? I've seen your product, but I think it's already relatively solved. You'll find it hard, and this was from someone who leads corporate innovation at and I can't tell you, it was almost like a load being taken off me. I'm like, oh wow, so I don't have to do that. Excellent.
Right? Yeah, that's also one use case of the sheet.
Yeah. So you don't have to think of a different customer. You don't have to think of now you have to build a product which was slightly available for both use cases, right? Now I didn't have to do that. Now I could just say, okay, one use case, focus there, right? And that just became so much easier. One, because I understand it also really well, right? And I had to actually understand that world if I had to solve for it well enough. So therefore, there was all that burden. So all I'm saying is when you figure, this magical thing is basically you have to finding the problem. A lot of people just think it's, oh yeah, this is a problem, this is a solution, chalo, business, right? Actually, that's where the art is,
Right.
Finding the right problem, defining the right solution, and seeing if you can get paid. I think, yeah.
Absolutely. I think I'd like to take a shot on one of the points that Chakradhar mentioned on.
Yeah.
I have 5 ideas, and which of these ideas should I pursue? The way to filter out and to validate your ideas, right? So today, when compared to even 5 years before, it's much more easier and cheaper to validate certain ideas, to even see that there is one, does the problem resonate with a lot of people, and if so, who? And second, how much are they willing to pay, right? So your market research and basic validation today is a lot more easier, especially through digital mediums, I think Ishwar shared this out on a recent LinkedIn post. Ankur Wariko has a great video on it, and many of us also recommend to guys who are validating ideas is to have a budget of 5,000, 10,000 rupees, create a landing page, have 2-3 varieties of your problem statement defined on it, and run Facebook ads or Google ads and see the type of people who come and sign up, right? Or who come and share that this is a problem, right? I remember, 3-4 months ago, another serial entrepreneur who sold his previous company to yourstory.com. He was trying to solve the problem of, reimagining spreadsheets, right? Can I create a completely MIS out of automated spreadsheets, right? And he got an amazing validation just by doing these 3 things right. He created multiple landing pages with different versions of copy of the problem statement, and people started resonating, and he ran ads only around Excel sheets, right? Different combination of keywords around Excel sheets. And that really helped him to build his MVP out and then take it out to a few pilot customers out, right? I think
Actually,
just that,
precisely what I did as well with Unsolved, right? It had 4 landing pages before we started, right? So 4 different landing pages which I shared widely, and I kept asking for feedback. Then I would share, would you pick this landing page versus this landing page?
right.
Both of them would have slightly different stories, right? So it was about whether it's a problem, whether it resonates, whether people are interested, all of that, right? So, but I completely agree with you here. I mean, this is a phenomenal method to do this, do this validation.
If you want to give some closing thoughts to, for first-time entrepreneurs, either to explore Unsolved as a platform to help them, ideate, validate, build out their first, product or a business model, right?
Yeah.
What will be your top 3 things or 5 things that you want to shout out?
So I think one is get quick idea validation if you have an idea, right? So so that's what we built Unsolved for, because we just want to say, hey, as simple as if you have an idea, drop it on here, describe it as well as you can, and other founders will tell you whether this makes sense or not, right? Because that's what Unsolved is. It's like a founder network, right? So other founders who are on the network will comment and will share what they think about your idea. Right. The second thing is, of course, if they say even remotely good things, still don't believe them completely. Right. The best way, of course, is to validate it, as you said. Get a landing page off the ground. Honestly, this is the easiest thing possible. On Unsolved.xyz, we have a section called tools. Which if you go there, you'll actually find tools that you can use to build pretty much stuff overnight. Right. So use one of those tools, build a landing page overnight. Right, share it with customers, and typically you will need iterations. Do those iterations, talk to a few customers, see if you can get anyone to start following up with you, right? Because typically what you would have done is concept sell. Now at some point in time, if your idea is really powerful, it will flip around, right? It will flip around where the person is like, okay, can I see a demo? Right? When are you launching? Right? So, and then you will say, I'm launching on, let's say, in 2 months, and that person will follow up with you in 15 days. Right? Are you on track? Right? So all of that will start happening. If you are genuinely solving a problem for them, they will, which hasn't been solved before, right? I mean, obviously there are existing solutions and they're like, yeah, sure. So that's the whole thing that I would say, from a validation standpoint, it's when it flips around, right? You are not following up, because a lot of people think if I talk to a customer and says, yeah, this will be useful. Yeah, you make it and come back, right? That's not validation, right? That's not validation. That's customers being polite. Right, saying, yeah, okay, chalo, kuch karo yaar, you're selling so much, chalo, I'll encourage you, right, at some level. The real validation is when you say, he starts following up, or he or she starts following up, and then you're in a position to say you want your features built in first, pay me. right? Okay, I'm working on it. See, this is where I've got. Show them some prototype, all of that. Oh, you want this feature? I don't have it, right? But I can schedule this feature earlier. But for that, my team is asking me that I need a commitment, a paid commitment from you, right? Small check, nothing major, right? Don't take a big check, anything. If they part with any money, it means that you have something, right? I think finding that route to first check, I think is the
Absolutely.
challenge. Yeah.
Mr. Chakradhar, you have been an active mentor in the ecosystem. What are your shout outs, final shout outs?
I think come on to Unsolved, test yourself, be bold enough to come on to the brainstorm, have ideas thrown at you, and there isn't a challenge that this group doesn't solve. So look forward to seeing you on Unsolved.
Excellent. So
And Bimlesh, I would like you to finally also kind of just talk a little bit about PitchCamp and the work that you do and the stages that I mean, basically, you're helping guys grow X to 10x. I'm assuming.
Yeah. So at PitchCamp, we do two things. One, we coach entrepreneurs on their entire fundraising process with a specific focus on crafting your pitch, right? Both on the content and as well the way you communicate your content, right? And the second thing that we do is to coach entrepreneurs on the sales life cycle for a B2B product, right? Many of them don't understand because of a lack of experience, especially for first-time founders, and more so folks coming from a tech-first background, right? Sales is completely new. There's a lot of hesitation in talking to even in an idea validation stage, they struggle to talk to customers or prospects to validate the idea. And then once a product is ready to sell, right, and then to go out and actually sell it, right? So this is the space that we operate in. We have coached about 25 startups so far on the investor pitch side, and we are working with 3 startups right now on their B2B sales growth side as well.
Awesome.
So sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. Please go ahead.
Now, I think my 3 takeaways, that or 3 shout outs for entrepreneurs is, this is not a get rich quick scheme, right? This is a journey of life transformation. Build a strong mindset and build a long runway to yourself, right? If you are a first generation entrepreneur, if you start early in life, entrepreneurship is a change in mindset. It's a way of thinking, right? You start with one idea, it fails, no problem. There's no shame in having the guts to attempt out the first time. You always have a fallback with your skill to go land up a job. A few years again, you come back and try another startup again. Once an entrepreneur, you're always an entrepreneur because that's a fundamental shift in your mind. Even in a job, you can play a lot of leadership roles as an entrepreneur because it's all about accountability and ownership, right? And that ability to take decisions. Thirdly, is most important is to reach out to people and ask for help. It is so important and yet so trivial, right? But a lot of us hesitate. I went through that process myself, and it was, your best friend and your worst enemy is your ego, right? You have to work with yourself to reach that stage where you are comfortable in seeking help. You're not begging for help, you're seeking help. There's a big difference, right? So think of entrepreneurship as a long-term game of your life. It's not a quick rich get scheme. Seek help, network, and if not one startup, another startup at a later point in time in life is always there to happen. But it's a beautiful journey, and if you have the ability to take it up, manage your finances, manage your family, it's worth a journey to experience, to live a life of stories that you can always share about. So
Amazing.
with this, I would like to thank all of you, all the people who have joined, this particular session. A deep gratitude to Ishwar and Chakradhar for being part of this session. I think this never felt out like a session. A great conversation. Thanks, Ishwar, for this idea of experimenting in this channel as well.
Yeah. I think Lair is also obviously awesome, and we love having our public discussions here. Whoever wants to listen in can listen in, and it looks like I definitely had a fun time. So yeah, thanks to both of you.
So two action items to all of you. Those who are listening in, subscribe to us on our websites of Unsolved.xyz and on PitchCamp.in. PitchCamp is also on all social platforms. We do a frequent podcast every week with different people around sales, growth, and entrepreneurship. So follow us on all channels, and same with Unsolved.xyz as well. So until the next session, thank you so much. All of you have a great night, a cold, chilly night out here in Bangalore. Right. So
Awesome.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you.